Today we will be learning how to convert fractions to decimals and decimals to fractions. Please copy down the standard benchmark indicator at the top of a clean page in your math notebook. The student will represent decimals in their equivalent fraction form in halves, fourths, fifths, eighths, and tenths. Fractions and decimals. A fraction and a decimal can both be used to represent the same value. Write 35 hundredths as a fraction. So write the decimal as a fraction with a denominator of 10, 100, 1,000, or another power of 10. In this case, it's 35 hundredths, which means 35 over 100. So we write the fraction form of 35 over 100, and then we simplify. We know both 35 and 100 can be divided by 5, so it simplifies down to 7/20ths. So 35 hundredths equals 7/20ths. Write 3/25ths as a decimal. So there's two methods here. One, you can write an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 10, 100, 1,000, or another power of 10. When you have a number that easily goes into a power of 10, like 25 easily goes into 100, you can just multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number to get it up into hundredths. So in this case, I multiplied 3 and 25 by 4 because 25 times 4 equals 100. And whatever you do to one part of a fraction, you have to do it to the other. So they multiplied 3 times 4, which gets us 12. So we get 12 hundredths. The other method to do it, which works if you don't have a fraction that goes into 100 or 10 very easily, you divide the numerator by the denominator. A fraction bar can be read as a division sign. So we read it as 3 divided by 25. So the numerator goes inside the house there, and the 25 goes outside the house. We know that 25 cannot go into 3, so they put the 0 up. Then they added a decimal behind the 3, and they added 2 zeros. Then 25 goes into 31, so they put the 1 above the first 0, subtracted the 25, and got a remainder of 5. So then they bring down the other 0, which makes it 50. So 25 divides evenly into 50 twice. So we put the 2 above the second 0, we subtract the 50, and we have no remainder. Sometimes you'll come across a repeating decimal, and we'll talk about what to do with those as we work through the sample problems today. But for most decimals, they are going to work out so you get a finite answer there. So either way, you get 12 hundredths equals 3/25ths. The sample problems. So write a decimal and a fraction in the simplest form for each sheeted portion. So if we look in step 1 here, the first thing we have to do is count all of the bars, and we can see there are 10. Then we can see that there are 6/10. So we're going to write it in decimal form first. Next, we're going to write the fraction 6/10, and then we're going to simplify it. We know 6 and 10 are both divisible by 2, so we're going to divide the numerator and the denominator by 2, which gets us 3/5. For number 2, we can see this 100 square, and we can see we have 2 full columns and then 8 more shaded in. So we know we have 28 hundredths. Now we know that both 28 and 100 can be divided by 4, so we're going to divide them both by 4 and get our simplest form. Which gets us an answer of 7/25ths. For numbers 3 through 5 here, we're going to write each decimal as a fraction in simplest form. So the first thing we're going to do is write the fraction 5/10, because we have the decimal 5/10, we're going to write the fraction, and then we'll simplify. We know we can divide 5 and 10 by 5, so we're going to do that on the numerator and the denominator, and we're going to get 1/2. For number 4, we have 8/10, so again, we're going to write the fraction as it sounds, and then we'll simplify. We know you can divide 8 and 10 both by 2, So we're going to divide it and get 4/5. For 5, we have 36 hundredths, and we know 36 and 100 can both be divided by 4, so that will help us get to our simplest form. So we get a simplified answer of 9/25. We're going to continue this for 6 through 8. So for 6, we have 25 hundredths, so we're going to put that up as a fraction. Then, as you can see, we can divide both the numerator and the denominator by 25, which allows us to simplify down to 1/4. For 7, we have 125 thousandths, so we're going to put that as a fraction. And then 125 and 1000 can actually both be divided by 125, so that gets us 1/8 as a simplified fraction. For number 8, we have 70 thousandths. Now we know with decimals that 0 at the end isn't holding any place value, so we're going to cross it out. Now if we read our decimal, we have 7 hundredths, which is easy to write as a fraction. And it cannot be simplified because we know 7 is prime and 100 is not divisible by 7. For 9 through 11, they want us to convert each fraction to a decimal. So for 9, we have 93 hundredths, so all we have to do is write that in decimal form, just like it sounds. Then for 10, we have 7/10, again, just like it sounds in decimal form, so we can just write it out. For 11, 11/20 does not directly convert right to a decimal, so we are going to have to do some work on this one. Because 20 goes evenly into 100, we're going to use the multiplying method to create an equivalent fraction. So as we write out our proportion here, we know to get from 20 to 100, we multiply by 5. So we need to do the same thing to the numerator. So 11/20 equals 55 hundredths in fraction form, which makes it very easy to convert directly to decimal form. For 12 through 14, we're going to continue writing these as decimals from fraction form to decimal. So 14/25, just like the last problem, we know 25 goes evenly into 100, so we're going to set up the proportion or the ratio again. So we know that 25 times 4 is 100, so we're going to multiply the numerator 14 by 4 as well. So our decimal equals 56 hundredths. For 13, 7/40 does not evenly go into 100. We can't create a fraction like we've done with the last two. So we're going to use method 2 now and divide. So we have 7 divided by 40. So when we put the 7 inside the house, then we add the decimal, and we're going to put 2 zeros to start with. We can always add more zeros if the problem keeps going. So we know 40 goes into 70 once. Then we have to figure out how many times 40 can go into 300. We know 4 goes into 37 times, so 40 might go into 307 times. So let's do the multiplication and check. So we get 280. That's as close as we can get without going over. So we're going to put the 7 up, subtract the 280. In this case, we do need to add a third zero because it hasn't gone in evenly yet. So now we have 40 dividing into 200, and we know it's going to go in exactly 5 times. Now I need to go back and put my decimal. With decimal division, the decimal comes straight up from where it is, so it's going to end up right in front of the 1. So we're going to end up with 175 thousandths as our decimal. For 14, we have 6 hundredths, and again, that's an easy one to convert directly to a decimal. For 15, geometry, draw 8 congruent figures. Shade some of the figures to make a color pattern. Write a decimal and a fraction in simplest form to represent the shaded part of a set. So we're going to use circles here. You can draw whatever shape you want. Just draw 8 of them, and then we're going to color in 3 of them. So now we need to write the decimal and the fraction in simplest form to represent the shaded part of a set. So we're going to write 3/8 as the fraction. Then we're going to change that into a decimal. And again, this is when we have to do the division method. And we know 8 can't divide into 3, so 8 goes into 33 times. Then we know 8 goes into 67 times. Then 8 is going to go into 45 times. Then we need to put the decimal in our answer. Since it's going to come straight up, it's going to end right in front of the 3. So our decimal form is 375 thousandths. Please make sure you've copied down all of the work and then glue this page in your math notebook.